Do a barrel roll.
Welcome to The Know. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Gus.
Star Citizen has been one of the biggest crowdfunding success stories in the history of gaming. I mean, I say one of, no, it is the biggest success story. It's raised over $190 million since its very first Kickstarter campaign back in 2012, and it's still going.
But as the years have gone by, some fans have become disillusioned about the epic space project from Chris Roberts that promised to take PC players back to the days of awesome flight sims like Wing Commander.
Right, well since then, things have changed just a little bit. The project has grown into not one, two games, a single player game they're calling Squadron 42, and an MMO called The Persistent Universe. But after all these years, neither one has a full release date still. They've released like some modules here and there, but still waiting for the full thing.
So of course that's led some frustrated fans to take matters into their own hands, and one early backer of the project decided to take them to court.
But not Gus.
Not me.
That fan was not Gus.
I was a late backer.
The fan, Ken Lord, gave nearly $4,500 to the project back in 2013, but this year he had had enough, so he took developer Roberts Space Industries to small claims court in California.
But his efforts didn't work. A few days ago, a judge dismissed the case and cited an arbitration clause in the Star Citizen end user license agreement. You better read those!
You gotta read those! You don't read them, you get in big trouble like this.
And that agreement prevents anyone from taking Roberts Space Industries to court for a refund.
Now it gets a little bit technical, but basically Lord argued the game's terms of service have changed multiple times over the years, and that arbitration clause says you can't take us to court for a refund wasn't in previous terms of services, like say maybe the one when he backed.
But in the end, the judge sided with Roberts Space Industries and its current terms of service.
RSI was asked by Motherboard about the availability of refunds in the game, and they responded, "Our terms of service provides refunds for 14 days after each pledge is made, but company policy is to refund anyone who has second thoughts for up to 30 days after their pledge, no questions asked."
Why do they have two policies?
Well, there's so that they can look like the good guys
Yeah.
when, you know, you call up and they're like, "Oh, well, you're out of your 14-day window, but I tell you what, we'll do it for you."
All right.
But they got to set a cutoff somewhere, right?
Okay, I guess. They added, outside of this window, we still consider refund requests for exceptional cases, but generally at that point, the funds need to be considered available for development. This policy is actually very generous when compared to nearly any other gaming company. Most publishers would not allow any refund at all after players have downloaded and played for several hours.
So basically, top line, if you're more than a month out, probably not getting a refund. And that's probably going to piss off some of the early backers of the game that have seen a lot of what's called feature creep.
That's a gaming development term for a project that gets bogged down as developers add on more and more features until it finally becomes too unwieldy.
And it happens a lot with crowdfunding games in particular, because they make too much money and they're like, what are we going to do with
Let's
all
do
this
more.
money? And then, whoops, unmanageable. I mean, that's what happened to, I in fact just talked about this in the roundup today, the 1994 sci-fi classic System Shock's remake as well. That project raised more than $1.3 million via Kickstarter, but then it got put on hiatus earlier this year because the dev team said the project had strayed too far from the original vision. They got a bunch of extra money, more than they thought they were going to get, and they were like, well, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can tweak this thing, and then it ended up all taking way more than they thought it would. So they came back a few months later with plans to get the project restarted, seem to have righted the ship, so that's good because they brought it back to the original vision.
But Star Citizen is in a league of its own when it comes to missed deadlines and feature creep.
Now, to give you just a little idea of how much Star Citizen has changed, the game was originally planned for release in 2014, which for those of you doing the math is 4 years ago.
That checks out. Back in 2012, when the Kickstarter launched, the initial pitch was to build a high-end space sim for PC, which had fallen out of style with the big game publishers.
The campaign promised that Star Citizen would bring the visceral action of piloting interstellar craft through combat and exploration to a new generation of gamers at a level of fidelity never before seen.
It also said the game would be a complete universe where any number of adventures can take place, allowing players to decide their own game experience. It said players would be able to pick up jobs as a smuggler, pirate, merchant, bounty hunter, or enlist as a pilot protecting the borders from outside threats.
And then the final game would be a huge sandbox with a complex and deep lore, allowing players to explore or play in whatever capacity they wish.
So obviously it's really ambitious stuff, and again, that was in the initial pitch.
Also, you could have just said, like Wing Commander, but no.
New.
That's what a lot of people were backing, I think. Since then, virtually none of that has actually materialized. There have been some really pretty looking spaceships, admittedly, some of which were sold to players for hundreds of dollars, a few playable modules, you got your hangar, you can go look at your pretty ships. So they do have some of that stuff going on. But the games not quite here yet.
Not quite there. The biggest content released so far has been Star Citizen Alpha version 3.0, which came out late last year.
Well, and the alpha seemed to show off some of the initial promises of the game's funding campaign. Really beautiful visuals for planets and ships you could fly around in. You could get into dogfights, even participate in a handful of missions.
But ultimately, there still wasn't much to do, no enemies to kill, and just a handful of planets to check out.
It was almost like, it felt kind of like a tech demo.
Oh, yeah. The spaceships were beautiful, but as Eurogamer noted, what is the point of owning a Lamborghini if you live in a neighborhood with speed bumps and a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit? I would say, what's the point of owning a Lamborghini if you can only look at it in your garage? That might be a better analogy.
Yeah, well, the alpha also had some major frame rate issues, and these were on servers with just 50 players, which makes me worry about a large-scale game.
As for Squadron 42, the single-player campaign, Cloud Imperium Games released an hour of gameplay footage earlier this year, and while it definitely looked pretty,
very pretty,
still no release date set, and some folks have felt like the MMO has taken focus away from the single-player game.
Meanwhile, all this is going on, the game's continuing to rake in cash. Star Citizen raised $34.9 million in 2017, $36.1 million in 2016, so it is still going strong. In both of those years, those totals were higher than every other video game on Kickstarter combined.
Wow. And it's worth asking, are backers entitled to a refund at this point?
It's been a long time.
Lord told Motherboard that he felt like he made a mistake backing the project, and he was annoyed when the developer called his funds a donation during the court proceedings.
Well, he also noted the game was originally described as a Wing Commander style single player mode, playable offline if you want, but now it's morphed into an MMO with a separate single player game that has some first person shooter elements.
Lord, who suffers from MS, says that he can't even play FPSs because of his condition, so now he's given money to a game that he can't play, and they still wouldn't give him a refund.
Well, it's also kind of like worth wondering, how did Star Citizen even get here? By their own count, they've raised more than $190 million, which is a lot. That's putting it up there with the most expensive games ever made.
For comparison to other big budget games, it's estimated that Grand Theft Auto 5 and Modern Warfare 2 cost around $250 million to make. Another expensive game, Star Wars The Old Republic, cost around $200 million. And to be fair, those all took a long time to make as well.
But they were also the products of really big studios. Now, it could be Roberts Space Industries ended up raising money for a AAA level game kind of accidentally, but they didn't have anything close to those kinds of staffing levels or the infrastructure to scale up.
And even bigger established developers fuck up games and have to scrap them, or they take forever, like Final Fantasy 15, Duke Nukem Forever.
Yeah, that happens. So for now, the Star Citizen saga continues onward. If you gave money to the project, safe to say they're not planning to return it anytime soon. This also sheds a little bit more of a light on what the money you put into crowdfunding campaigns is. Obviously, Robert Space Industries says it's a donation.
It's a donation.
That's what it is. That's what crowdfunding means. It's you are giving your money in the hopes that the product is eventually made. But there are a lot of crowdfunding projects that cut and run and take the money and never get delivered. This one, at least they're working on.
We'll see.
They've got some playable module stuff.
Well, what do you guys think about Star Citizen's refund policy? Let us know in the comments.
And for all your gaming news, be sure to like this video, and if you're new here, subscribe to the Know.
True heights revealed.
Yeah, this is, I guess everyone in the world is tall to me, so I forget how up I look until I actually think about it.
Lots of times when
this is a lot of up.
Lots
also,
of times
maybe I stand
when we're
far
talking,
away.
You're either on the boxes or we're sitting.
This is
You're
way better.
never like that close
Right.
in real life.
Yeah, this is